My name is Marcus Hale. I'm 44 years old, and for 16 years I was the backbone of a luxury branding agency that catered to Fortune 500 clients. I wasn't the flashiest guy in the room. I didn't need to be. My reputation came from execution. I delivered on time, under budget, and with a Rolodex of client loyalty most partners would kill for. I wasn't management, but I knew every pulse of that place, until the day I walked into a boardroom and left without a job. They dressed it up nicely, of course. "We're restructuring," they said. "New energy," they added. And then came the real reason. The CEO's 26-year-old nephew, Chase, zero experience but a killer Instagram following, and an MBA he could barely spell. "You've been amazing, Marcus," the CEO told me with a grin. "But we're moving in a fresher direction." Fresher. That word hung in the air like spoiled milk. I nodded, stood and left. No theatrics. Just the echo of a betrayal I'd seen coming, but hoped wouldn't land at my door. Back at my apartment, I poured a glass of scotch and stared at the ceiling. They didn't just fire me, they replaced me. And not because I'd failed, but because they thought I'd stay silent, because they assumed experience was disposable, loyalty laughable. But what they forgot was that while Chase had a last name, I had something far more dangerous. The trust of every major client we'd ever landed, relationships built over years. I didn't need their office to keep those alive. I just needed time. So I gave myself 3 days. No emails, no moves. Just stillness. Let them believe I was licking my wounds. Let Chase settle in, introduce himself, maybe even make a few rookie mistakes. And while they clinked glasses over what they thought was a clean transition, I opened a blank document, a simple spreadsheet. One name at a time, one contact, one quiet reminder of who actually built the relationships they just tossed aside. Because I wasn't planning to get even. I was planning to make myself unforgettable. The first 3 days were deliberate silence. I didn't vent online. I didn't text coworkers. I didn't even open LinkedIn. I let the dust settle. Let the agency post their curated farewell. The classic "thank you for your years of service" PR send-off, the one they use when they don't want to admit what they've done. I watched as they rolled out their new golden boy, Chase. Polished headshots, a press release with buzzwords he probably didn't understand. Digital transformation, next-gen branding, millennial leadership. I could already hear the clients rolling their eyes. See, they thought they'd replaced a technician. What they didn't realize was they'd severed their artery. I wasn't just a strategist. I was the confidant, the fixer. I knew which clients needed extra hand-holding before Q2, who hated being emailed before 10 a.m., but who required 3 calls before signing anything. Chase didn't know any of that. He didn't even know how to pronounce half their names. He thought relationships came from PowerPoints and bold fonts. I had built mine with consistency, with trust, and with quiet attention to what people didn't say. On the 4th day, I made a single call, not to a client, not yet. To Nadia. She'd worked as a senior account manager with me for 7 years, then left the agency 6 months prior for something with more vision, as she'd put it. We'd always stayed cordial. I sent her a text. "Can I call you for 5 minutes? No drama, just facts." She replied in 2. "Absolutely." When we spoke, I laid it out clean. No bitterness, just numbers, names, and timing. "I'm not planning a war," I told her, "but I am rebuilding, quiet and clean. You in?" Her laugh was short and sharp. "I hated how they did you. I'm in." That was all I needed. I had the bridge, and I had the first brick. Together we opened a new shared document. Clean branding, restructured service packages, value-first copywriting. By the end of the day, We had a working draft of what would become the pitch for our own boutique agency. Small, focused, nimble. Everything the old agency wasn't anymore. Everything Chase had no clue how to compete with. And then I made my first client call. Not to poach, to reconnect. Alex from Titan Industrial, 15 years of holiday cards, contract renewals, late-night crisis calls. I didn't sell. I just checked in. Told him I was no longer with the agency and wished him well. There was a pause. Then he said, "They already reached out. The new kid sounds like he's selling me a TED talk." I stayed quiet. Then he asked, "Wherever you're going, let me know. I don't follow logos. I follow people." That's when I knew the foundation they stole was already crumbling under them. The next week unfolded like clockwork. Not loud, not chaotic, just steady, inevitable erosion. I didn't chase clients. I didn't beg for attention. I simply let them know I was building something. Quieter, more focused, without the layers of arrogance and boardroom nonsense, and without fail, the ones that mattered, responded. Some in hours, some in days. But they all said the same thing. "When you're ready, we want in." I hadn't just left a company, I'd left fingerprints on every project that succeeded under their banner. Meanwhile, Chase was trying to impersonate competence. I saw it in his emails to former clients. The tone too eager, the subject line screaming in all caps, like desperation disguised as innovation. He was trying to automate trust. But trust doesn't live in CRMs or bullet points. It lives in showing up at 7 p.m. on a Friday when a client is panicking about a launch. It lives in knowing their kids' names, their trigger points, their vision. Chase didn't have that. All he had was access. And access without understanding? That's just a time bomb. By the third week, I had 6 verbal commitments. I hadn't even launched yet. I didn't post a press release. I didn't change my job title. I simply whispered my intentions in the right ears, and those ears turned into hands, hands willing to sign. I wasn't just building a business, I was building a rebellion, not out of rage, but out of integrity. These clients weren't fleeing a company, they were following loyalty, and with each I'm in, the foundation they'd booted me from cracked a little more. Then the first email leaked. A junior account manager I'd mentored for years forwarded me a thread from Chase, frantic, chaotic, begging someone to explain why legacy clients were going dark. The tone was corporate panic. "What's our retention strategy? Why aren't they responding? Should we offer discounts?" Discounts. That's how he thought you salvaged trust. With coupons. I forwarded the thread to Nadia with one word: amateurs. She replied with 3. Let them drown. By week 5, I launched Hale & Mercer, a clean brand, minimalist site, and a waiting list that spoke louder than any investor pitch. No fluff, no disruption, just results. The first client signed within 90 minutes of launch, the second before dinner. By the end of the week, I had to bring on a third team member just to keep up with the inquiries, and the old agency. They started bleeding, slowly but visibly. First the whispers, then the headlines. Long-time clients exit legacy firm amid restructuring confusion. But I didn't say a word. I didn't claim credit. I just built in silence while they collapsed in confusion. It was a Tuesday morning when the message came in. My phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen since the day they escorted me out with a forced smile and a hollow handshake. Martin Gresham. CEO, architect of my erasure. The man who sat at the head of the table while they gave my seat away to a nepotism experiment in designer sneakers. His email was short, polished, desperate beneath the surface. We should talk. I'd prefer to clear the air personally. Let me know when you're available. I stared at it for 5 full minutes before closing my laptop. He wasn't reaching out to clear the air. He was trying to cauterize the wound before it became a headline. What he didn't realize was the bleeding had already begun. Client by client, confidence by confidence. I'd kept my moves quiet, intentional, but results don't stay hidden. His board had to be asking questions by now. Why are we losing long-term accounts? Why are contracts expiring early? Why are we hemorrhaging trust while a former employee's name keeps popping up in renewal meetings? My silence was no longer absence. It was echo. I didn't respond right away. I gave it a day. Then two. Let the tension stretch. Let him squirm. Let every hour without my reply remind him of the power he'd casually discarded. When I finally answered, my reply was surgical. Appreciate the message. I'm currently focused on client onboarding and not entertaining external conversations at this time. Wishing you the best as you navigate the transition. That last word, transition, was a scalpel, clean, precise. I CC'd his assistant just to make sure it didn't get lost. 3 days later, I received another message, this time a call from a private number. I let it go to voicemail. Martin's voice, once commanding, now cracked with performance. Marcus, I want to acknowledge how we handled your departure. In hindsight, there were missteps. Chase wasn't ready. We should have discussed things differently. The pause, the struggle, if you'd consider a consulting arrangement or even a leadership conversation, the door's open. I listened, then deleted the message without saving it. Because some doors don't need closing, they need to stay locked behind you. The irony was poetic. They had handed my seat to a child with a famous last name, and now that the house was crumbling, they were knocking on my door, hoping I'd come back and prop it up again. But what they failed to understand is once you learn your worth outside the room they tried to confine you to, you don't go back, you build your own floor. And Hale and Mercer, we were thriving. Our growth wasn't flashy. It was surgical, the kind that makes old rivals scramble behind closed doors. My calendar was full, my hands were steady, and the only thing I regretted was not leaving sooner. Chase's implosion didn't happen all at once. It unraveled in layers, first subtle, then undeniable. Clients stopped replying to his emails. Internal staff began leaking frustrations through side channels. One of my former assistants sent me a quiet message. He tried to pitch Titan Industrial with the wrong data set, completely botched the call. Another said he showed up to a client lunch 30 minutes late and couldn't remember the company's name. The cracks were no longer hairline. They were fractures you could hear echo through the agency's walls. He wasn't ready, and everyone finally saw it. The charm wore off fast when the results didn't come with it. The board started asking questions. Why were top-tier accounts fleeing? Why was Chase handling enterprise clients solo? Why had they alienated the one person who'd built the relationships they now depended on? Behind the scenes, junior staff were covering for him. Directors were quitting in quiet waves, and while all this happened, I kept building. We onboarded 3 new clients that month. One of them even came with a private thank you note. Glad to be back with the person who actually understands our business. But the final blow didn't come from me. It came from a client. Titan Industrial, one of the firm's largest retainers, publicly announced their departure from the agency. The statement was diplomatic, but the subtext was brutal. We've decided to move in a direction aligned with our long-term values and with leadership that has consistently delivered. My name wasn't in the press release, but I didn't need it to be. Within 48 hours, 4 more clients followed. Chase wasn't just failing, he was sinking the ship. And the captain had already jumped. 2 days later, I got an anonymous tip. Martin had asked the board for a vote to quietly reassign Chase. Too much heat, too much loss. The rebrand they thought would elevate the agency had instead exposed everything fragile beneath it, and now they were scrambling for stability. It was poetic. They discarded loyalty for optics, and now they had neither. I wasn't the one who made them bleed. I had simply stopped being the bandage. So I made one final move. Not out of pettiness, out of permanence. I secured the domain name for my old agency's tagline, the one I wrote years ago, the one they still used on brochures. It was just sitting there, unclaimed. I bought it for $12 and redirected it to Hale & Mercer's landing page. A silent redirect. No fanfare, just one more thread quietly pulled. And with that, the loop closed. It's strange how peace arrives, not with fanfare or headlines, but with stillness. One morning, I woke up, checked the Hale & Mercer inbox, and realized there were no fires to put out. No scrambling, no damage control, just momentum. Clean, forward-moving. Clients trusted us. Referrals came not from ads, but from conversations. I'd built a company where trust wasn't manufactured in marketing decks. It was embedded in the culture, and all of it happened without me raising my voice once. A month later, I got word that Chase had officially been removed from his role. Transitioned, they called it. But I knew the truth. He was gone. A footnote in a cautionary tale about ego over experience. No public statement, no LinkedIn farewell, just silence. The kind of silence that echoes deeper than any apology. Martin never called again. I assume he knew that there was no redemption arc to write, no narrative to spin where I came back to save the company that had once watched me walk out without hesitation. Sometimes I imagine what it must feel like for them now, to sit in boardrooms trying to mimic what I did naturally, to scan spreadsheets wondering why loyalty doesn't track in KPIs. But I don't linger on it long. I don't need to, because the legacy they tried to erase, I took it with me, not as a weapon, but as proof that when someone tries to silence the one who built the house, they shouldn't be surprised when the roof comes down. Now, when I walk into client meetings, I don't carry resentment, I carry clarity. When I talk to young entrepreneurs, I don't warn them about betrayal. I teach them how to own every blueprint from day one. I tell them what I learned the hard way. If you're building something real, protect it with paper trails, with licenses, with boundaries. And when they ask what to do if someone steals it, I say, you rebuild stronger, cleaner, louder by your presence alone. Closure didn't come in the form of revenge. It came when I stopped needing anything from people who were never capable of respect. In the end, I didn't take them down. I just took everything they thought they could replace. And I did it all with silence. If you've ever been discarded, underestimated or replaced by someone who didn't earn their seat, drop a comment below. Let them know the quiet ones are never the ones to bet against. Subscribe for more true stories of strategic revenge, earned success, and how calm always wins in the end.